Chosen one, why did you wake up at 3:17 a.m. last night with your heart pounding? Why have you been carrying this inexplicable weight in your chest for weeks? Why does it feel like something monumental is about to happen, but you can't put your finger on what? Stop, right where you are. Stop scrolling, stop multitasking, stop pretending this is just another video that randomly appeared on your screen. This is not a coincidence. You didn't find this message. This message found you, and if you think that's just spiritual talk, let me shock you with a truth that's going to hit you like lightning. God has been orchestrating the last 72 hours of your life to bring you to this exact moment. Every delay, every detour, every random thought that led you here, divine strategy. Heaven is knocking on your door right now, and you may never hear this knock again. Listen to me carefully. There are 8 billion people on this planet, but only a fraction will ever hear what you're about to hear. Not because God plays favorites, but because most people have spiritually numbed themselves to the frequency of the divine. Their hearts have grown cold, their ears have grown dull. But you're still awake, you're still listening. Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. Tomorrow isn't just another Tuesday. Tomorrow is a spiritual checkpoint, a divine appointment that's been marked on heaven's calendar since before you took your first breath. And tonight is your final preparation. God has something urgent to tell you before the sun rises again. Something about your destiny that's been hidden. Something about your calling that's been buried under years of disappointment and doubt. But here's the terrifying truth: if you miss this window, if you let this moment slip by because you're too busy or too tired or too skeptical, you might spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. What if tonight was the night your destiny shifted forever? What if God had something to say and you missed it? Before we go deeper into this sacred moment together, I want to pause and honor something beautiful. Thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating. You're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and let your heart respond. But right now, if something in your spirit is already stirring, if your hands are trembling as you hold this device, if tears are forming in your eyes and you don't even know why, pause this right now. Type "I'm here, Lord" in the comments. Don't wait for the end. This is your moment. Because what I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes will either transform your life forever or confirm that your season of divine encounters has already passed. The choice is yours. Why do you feel so alone in crowded rooms? Why does your soul ache for something you can't even name? Why does everyone else seem to coast through life while you carry weight that has no earthly explanation? Dear one, what I'm about to tell you might sound impossible, but somewhere deep in your spirit, in that sacred chamber of your heart, where only truth can echo, you already know this. You are not ordinary. You never were. And if your soul just stirred when I said that, if something inside you whispered, yes, then listen carefully, because this truth is about to set you free from years of confusion about your identity. Look around you right now. Look at the people in your neighborhood, scrolling mindlessly through their phones. Look at your own family members, content with their daily routines, never questioning, never searching, never feeling that restless hunger for something more. They sleep peacefully at night. They don't wake up at 3 a.m. with their hearts pounding. They don't carry this inexplicable burden that you've been carrying your entire life. Why are you different? Why have you always been different? Because before the foundation of the world was laid, before the first star was hung in space, the Almighty God looked through the corridors of time and marked you. Jeremiah 1:5 says it plainly, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Set apart, not suggested for, not recommended for, set apart. You are not wallpaper in this world, beloved. You are the blueprint. You are not lost in the crowd. You are the reason the crowd exists. But here's what breaks my heart, and maybe it will break yours too. You've spent decades, maybe your entire adult life, trying to convince yourself that you're just like everyone else, that you should fit in, that you should be satisfied with what satisfies them, that the fire burning in your chest is just indigestion, and the dreams that keep you awake are just fantasies. You've been trying to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for you. Think about your childhood for a moment. Were you the one who saw things others couldn't see? Were you the sensitive one, the one who felt everything deeper? Were you the child who talked to God like he was sitting right next to you at the breakfast table? That wasn't imagination, dear one. That was recognition, your spirit recognizing its divine origin. The Apostle Peter understood this when he wrote in 1 Peter 2-9, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." Royal priesthood. Not royal someday. Not royal if you're good enough. You are royal. Right now. In your worn-out bathrobe, with your morning coffee, struggling to pay your electric bill, you are royalty in the kingdom of heaven. But if you're chosen, if you're marked, if you're royal, why has life felt so impossibly hard? Here's the truth that's going to rock you to your core. The enemy has been trying to kill you before you ever realized who you were. Every betrayal that cut deeper than it should have, every disappointment that felt like death, every door that slammed in your face when you were following what you thought was God's leading, every financial crisis that brought you to your knees, every health scare that made you question everything, every relationship that ended in devastating heartbreak. None of it was random. You've been under targeted attack your entire life because hell saw what heaven placed inside you. The devil doesn't waste ammunition on ordinary people. He doesn't send his best demons after folks who pose no threat to his kingdom. But you've been in his crosshairs since the day you took your first breath. Every tear you've cried wasn't just pain, it was preparation. Every mountain you've climbed wasn't just struggle, it was strengthening. Every valley you've walked through wasn't just hardship, it was training for the souls you're about to rescue. You think your scars disqualify you. Your scars are your qualifications. You think your broken places make you useless. Your broken places are where God's light shines through brightest. Right now, some of you are sitting there thinking, but I'm 65 years old, I'm 75, I'm 85. If God was going to use me, wouldn't he have done it already? Stop. Right. There. Moses was 80 when God called him to deliver a nation. Abraham was 75 when God told him to leave everything and follow a promise he couldn't see. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to the impossible. Your age isn't your expiration date, it's your experience level. While others your age are playing it safe, God is calling you to play it supernatural. While they're winding down, He's calling you to power up. While they're making peace with mediocrity, He's awakening the warrior inside you that's been sleeping for decades. You are not too old. You are not too tired. You are not too broken. You are exactly the right age, with exactly the right experience, carrying exactly the right scars to accomplish what God has been preparing you for your entire life. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul right now. Time is running out. Not your time, God's timing. The window of opportunity that's opening tomorrow isn't going to stay open forever. The divine appointment that's been set for you isn't going to wait for you to feel ready. You've been marked since before time began. You've been prepared through decades of testing. You've been refined in fires that would have destroyed lesser souls. The question that will determine your destiny is not whether you're chosen. You are chosen. The question is, will you finally answer the call? Because tomorrow morning, when you wake up, you're going to feel something different. Something's shifting in the spiritual realm around your life. And what I'm about to reveal next will explain exactly what God is preparing to release through you. You know what breaks my heart? It's when I meet someone in their 70s who looks me in the eye and whispers, "Pastor, I think God forgot about me." Someone who's buried 3 friends this year, who takes 7 pills every morning just to function, who sits alone in a house that used to echo with laughter but now only echoes with silence. Maybe that's you right now. Maybe you're sitting there wondering why life had to be so much harder for you than it was for others. Why did your marriage end after 43 years? Why did your retirement fund disappear overnight in 2008? Why does your body betray you when your spirit still feels 25? Here's what I need you to understand, dear one. What you've been calling your greatest failures, what you've been labeling as God's punishment, what you've been carrying as evidence that you somehow deserved less. That wasn't divine abandonment, that was divine preparation. Listen to me carefully. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. Think about gold for a moment. Raw gold, straight from the earth, is worthless. It's mixed with dirt, contaminated with impurities, dull and lifeless. But when that gold is placed in the refiner's fire, when the flames reach exactly 1948 degrees Fahrenheit, something miraculous happens. The impurities burn away. The dross rises to the surface and gets skimmed off. What remains isn't just gold, it's pure gold, precious gold, valuable gold. Gold is never polished with a feather. It takes fire. And you, chosen one, have been in the refiner's fire your entire life. That divorce that nearly destroyed you at 62, that was God burning away a relationship that was suffocating your true purpose. That financial collapse that left you eating generic cereal for breakfast, that was heaven clearing out your trust in earthly security so you could learn to depend on eternal provision. That diagnosis that made you face your mortality, that was the Almighty teaching you that your value isn't in your performance, it's in your presence. Every scar on your heart is a line in your spiritual fingerprint. Every tear you've cried has been collected in heaven's bottles. Every night you've laid awake, wondering if tomorrow would bring relief, God was right there, holding you, preparing you for something your mind couldn't comprehend, but your spirit always knew was coming. But here's what's going to shock you to your core. The reason your life has been harder isn't because you're cursed, it's because you're chosen. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty targets. Satan doesn't deploy his best weapons against people who pose no threat to his kingdom. You've been under attack your entire life because hell saw what heaven placed inside you before you were even born. Think about this. Why did Pharaoh try to kill all the Hebrew baby boys? Because he knew a deliverer was coming. Why did Herod slaughter the innocents in Bethlehem? Because he sensed a king had been born. Why has your life been marked by more trials, more heartache, more battles than the average person? Because the enemy recognized something in you that you're just now beginning to remember. The attacks came not because you were weak, but because the enemy saw what was about to be born through you. Every time you should have given up but didn't, every moment you should have lost faith but held on, every season you should have been destroyed but somehow survived, that wasn't luck. That wasn't stubborn willpower. That was the indestructible nature of a chosen vessel refusing to break under pressure that would have crushed ordinary people. You know what Job said after losing everything? Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. Job 13:15. He didn't understand why the fire was so hot, but he understood who controlled the flame. And at the end of his story, God didn't just restore what Job had lost, he gave him double. But I need to address something that's probably eating at your soul right now. You're sitting there thinking, if I'm so chosen, why do I feel so forgotten? If I'm so special, why am I so alone? Because true gold spends most of its time hidden. Diamonds are formed in the dark, under pressure, miles beneath the surface, where no one can see them. The most valuable things in God's kingdom are often developed in secret, refined in isolation, perfected in places where human eyes cannot witness the process. Your loneliness wasn't abandonment, it was appointment. You were being prepared for an assignment so significant that it required you to learn how to hear God's voice above every other voice. You needed to know His presence when human presence failed. You needed to experience His faithfulness when human faithfulness fell short. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to deliver Israel. Joseph rotted in prison for years before he ruled Egypt. David hid in caves for 7 years before he touched the throne. Your season of hiddenness, your years of feeling forgotten, that wasn't punishment. That was preparation for a purpose so magnificent that it required a lifetime of refinement. And here's the urgency you need to grasp. All that preparation, all that fire, all that pain, it wasn't for nothing. It was preparing you for this moment, this season, this divine appointment where God is about to reveal why you had to go through everything you went through. The question isn't why life hurt so much. The question is, are you ready to discover what all that pain was preparing you for? If you've walked through more than you could bear, but never gave up. If you've been broken, but never shattered. If you're still breathing, still believing, still hoping, when logic says you should have quit years ago, type "I'm still standing" in the comments. Let heaven and hell know you're still here. Because what God is about to show you next will make every tear worth it, every scar sacred, and every painful moment a stepping stone to your greatest triumph. The fire wasn't meant to burn you, beloved. It was meant to reveal the gold that was in you all along. But are you ready to see what's been forged in the flames? You know what breaks my heart? It's when I meet someone who's been receiving divine messages for months, maybe even years, and they've convinced themselves it's just their imagination. Dear one, that dream you had 3 weeks ago where you saw yourself standing in a field of light and you woke up crying but couldn't explain why. That wasn't your subconscious playing tricks on you. That was God showing you a glimpse of your destiny. The dreams weren't random. The chills weren't meaningless. The timing wasn't accidental. But here's what the enemy has been doing to you. He's been whispering one poisonous lie over and over. You're making this up. You're being dramatic. God doesn't speak to ordinary people like you. And slowly, gradually, you started believing him. You started dismissing the very signs that heaven was sending to prepare you for this moment. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times in the last 6 months have you felt a sudden, unexplainable urge to pray? Not because something was wrong, not because you were in crisis, but because something inside you just stirred. You'd be washing dishes, or watching television, or lying in bed, and suddenly your spirit would say, "Pray now." That wasn't religious conditioning. That was the Holy Spirit activating your prayer antenna, because he knew you were going to need a direct line to heaven for what's coming. And what about those numbers? Oh, you thought I wouldn't know about the numbers, didn't you? The way 777 keeps showing up on receipts, license plates, digital clocks. The way you keep glancing at your phone and it's exactly 3:33 a.m. The way your grocery bill came to $7.77 and the cashier looked at you funny because you just stood there staring. Those aren't coincidences, chosen one. Those are divine breadcrumbs. God has been leaving you a trail to follow, and every number, every sign, every random occurrence has been him saying, "I see you, I'm preparing you, stay alert." But let me tell you about the sign that most people miss entirely. It's that tightness in your chest, that feeling like something is sitting on your ribcage, making it hard to breathe deep. You've probably been to doctors, they've run tests, everything comes back normal, and they look at you like you're crazy when you try to explain that it feels like your heart is waiting for something. What if that tightness in your chest wasn't anxiety? What if it wasn't stress or age or caffeine? What if it was a divine alarm bell? Here's what I know about that feeling, and this might shock you. It's your spirit man trying to break through the walls your natural mind has built. Your soul knows something your brain hasn't figured out yet. Your spirit can sense that you're on the edge of a breakthrough so massive that your physical body is literally preparing for the impact. And those moments of sudden emotional heaviness, when you're standing in line at the grocery store and tears just start flowing for no reason you can name, when you're watching a commercial about car insurance and suddenly you're sobbing, that's not menopause, dear one. That's not depression. That's your soul responding to the spiritual pressure that's building around your life. God has been increasing the atmospheric pressure in your spiritual environment, and your emotions are the barometer. You've been feeling the storm coming because a storm is coming, not a storm of destruction, a storm of divine intervention. But here's the sign that absolutely confirms you're chosen: the déjà vu. Not just the occasional "I feel like I've been here before," but the intense, frequent moments where you know you've lived this exact moment before, where you can almost predict what's going to happen next, where reality feels like it's glitching. That's because your spirit has been having meetings with God in the night seasons that your conscious mind doesn't remember. While you've been sleeping, heaven has been downloading the blueprint of your next season. And now, as you're living it out in real time, your spirit recognizes the script because it helped write it. He's been tapping your shoulder. This video, he just raised his voice. But I need to tell you something that's going to make you uncomfortable. Every sign you've ignored, every spiritual nudge you've dismissed, every moment you chose logic over intuition, it's been recorded. Not as condemnation, but as evidence. Evidence that God has been pursuing you, relentlessly, consistently, lovingly. Evidence that your breakthrough isn't a maybe, it's an inevitability. The problem isn't that God hasn't been speaking. The problem is that you've been so afraid of being wrong, so terrified of looking foolish, so convinced that you're not spiritual enough to hear from heaven, that you've been filtering out his voice. But tonight, the filter comes off. Tonight, you stop second-guessing what your spirit already knows. Tonight, you start honoring the divine intelligence that's been trying to guide you home to your purpose. Because here's what's about to happen, and this is why God needed you spiritually alert before tomorrow arrives. The signs that have been whispers are about to become shouts. The nudges that have been gentle are about to become undeniable. The doors that have been cracked open are about to swing wide. But the question that will determine whether you walk through those doors or stand frozen in shock is this: will you finally trust what your spirit has been telling you all along? Listen to me, chosen one. You've been wondering why your breakthrough hasn't come yet. You've been questioning why God seems silent when your pain screams the loudest. You've been lying awake at 3 a.m. asking God, when will my season change? Here's the answer that's going to shake you to your core. God has been waiting for this exact moment, not yesterday, not next week, right now. You see, divine timing isn't about God being slow, it's about God being surgical. He doesn't operate on your schedule, he operates on destiny's schedule. And tonight, beloved, the spiritual clock just struck midnight. The countdown that began the moment you clicked play isn't random, it's prophetic. Think about Queen Esther. For years, she lived as an orphan, thinking her story was small, unremarkable. But Mordecai saw what she couldn't see. When the decree came to destroy her people, he looked at her and said something that echoes through eternity. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? For such a time as this, not for such a time as that. Not for when you feel ready, not for when circumstances align perfectly. For this time, this crisis, this moment when everything hangs in the balance. Dear one, your entire life has been leading to this conversation. Every heartbreak prepared your heart for this healing. Every closed door redirected you toward this opening. Every season of silence trained your ears to hear what God is saying now. But here's what's going to cut deep. How many divine appointments have you already missed? How many times has God tried to speak and you were too busy, too distracted, too wounded to listen? The writer of Hebrews understood the urgency when he penned these words. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Did you catch that word? Today, not tomorrow. Not when you get your life together, not when you feel more spiritual. Today. Your heart has been growing harder with each disappointment, hasn't it? Each unanswered prayer built another brick in the wall around your spirit. Each betrayal added another layer of protection that's actually become your prison. But tonight, God is taking a sledgehammer to that wall. I need you to understand something that's going to revolutionize how you see your timing. You're not late. You're not behind. You're not missed your window. You are arriving precisely when heaven scheduled your arrival. Moses was 80 when God called him from the burning bush. 80. In today's world, he'd be collecting Social Security, not splitting seas. But God looked at 8 decades of preparation and said, "Now you're ready. Now you understand suffering. Now you know what it means to depend on me completely." Abraham was 75 when God called him to leave everything. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to promise. Anna the prophetess was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. But here's the terrifying truth that's going to make your hands shake. Tomorrow is a spiritual pivot point. You're standing at the exact center of a divine crossroads, and the direction you choose in the next few hours will determine the trajectory of your remaining years. You're on the brink of either breakthrough or breakdown. There is no middle ground. There is no neutral. Heaven is forcing a decision, and your response tonight determines which path you take. Think about the children of Israel at the Red Sea. Behind them, Pharaoh's army thundering closer by the minute. In front of them, an impossible wall of water. Moses had to choose, retreat in fear or advance in faith. That choice, made in a moment of absolute terror, determined the destiny of an entire nation. That's where you are right now. The enemy is thundering behind you, whispering about your age, your failures, your missed opportunities. In front of you is something that looks impossible. God asking you to believe again, to hope again, to trust again. Your delay has been costing you more than you know. Every day you've waited for a better time to respond to God's call, the enemy has been stealing your influence, your impact, your very purpose. Every night you've gone to bed saying, "Maybe tomorrow." You've given the thief another 24 hours to ransack your destiny. But God isn't waiting anymore. The countdown started the moment you clicked play, and I can hear the timer ticking. This isn't a drill. This isn't practice. This is the main event. And you have a front row seat to your own resurrection. The silence you've been interpreting as God's absence, that was God positioning you for this moment of divine intervention. The delays you've been calling rejections, those were redirections toward this appointment that couldn't happen until you were desperate enough, broken enough, ready enough to hear what He's about to say. Your season of preparation is over. Your season of activation begins now. Not when you feel ready, not when circumstances improve, not when your faith feels stronger. Now, in your weakness, in your confusion, in your desperate need for a word from heaven. Write today's date in the comments right now. Don't wait until the end. Declare, "I heard him. I responded. This is my turning point." Because what happens next is going to require you to remember the exact moment when everything changed. The moment you stopped running from your calling and started running toward it. Dear chosen one, we've reached the sacred threshold. Everything that's happened in your life, every heartbreak that nearly destroyed you, every sleepless night when you cried out to an empty ceiling, every moment you felt forgotten by heaven itself, it was all leading to this conversation. Right now, at this very moment, the veil between heaven and earth is thinner than it's ever been in your lifetime. God isn't just near you, He's leaning in. He's been waiting for this exact moment when your heart would finally be desperate enough, broken enough, humble enough to truly listen. But here's what's breaking my heart as I speak to you tonight. For 70, 80, maybe 90 years, you've been talking to God instead of talking with God. You've been throwing prayers at heaven like stones into a well, hoping something would echo back. You've been begging, pleading, bargaining with the Almighty, as if He was some distant CEO who might, if you're lucky, squeeze you into His schedule. That stops tonight. Listen to me carefully, beloved. God doesn't want your perfect prayers. He doesn't need your theological vocabulary. He doesn't require you to have your life figured out before you approach His throne. In fact, Psalm 34:18 declares something that will shatter every religious lie you've ever believed. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Did you catch that? He's close to the brokenhearted, not distant, not disappointed, close. The very brokenness you've been trying to hide is what draws him near. What if tonight you finally hear the answer you've waited years for? What if the question that's been haunting your soul since you were 35 years old finally gets answered? What if the wound that's never quite healed finally receives the divine touch it's been crying out for? Here's the shocking truth that's going to revolutionize how you see God forever. He isn't waiting for you to be perfect. He's waiting for you to be present. Think about that grandmother who raised 6 children, buried her husband of 53 years, and now sits alone in a house that echoes with memories. She whispers to me after church, "Pastor, does God still hear me? Have I become invisible to heaven?" Beloved, that grandmother doesn't need to perform for God. She needs to simply show up. Present, raw, real. Or consider the grandfather who built a business with his bare hands, only to watch it crumble in the recession. He tells me, "I feel like I failed everyone, including God." Dear soul, your failures don't disqualify you from God's presence. They qualify you for His grace. The enemy has convinced you that you need to clean up your act before you can have a real conversation with the Creator. That's a lie from the pit of hell. Look at Jacob. He wrestled with God all night and walked away blessed, not because he won, but because he wouldn't let go. Look at David. He cried out to God from caves, from battlefields, from the deepest pits of despair, and God called him a man after His own heart. Right now, I want you to do something that might feel uncomfortable. I want you to find a quiet space. If you're in a room with others, step away. If you're lying in bed, sit up. If you're driving, pull over when it's safe. This moment requires your full attention because God's about to speak. Close your eyes. Yes, right now. Don't worry about how you look. Don't worry about whether this is too emotional or too much. Breathe deeply. Feel the air filling your lungs. That's the same breath God breathed into Adam. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Now listen to what I'm about to tell you, and let it penetrate the deepest chambers of your heart. God has been waiting for this conversation longer than you have. While you've been wondering if He cares, He's been orchestrating every circumstance to bring you to this place of surrender. While you've been questioning His love, He's been collecting every tear you've cried in bottles of remembrance. Here's your assignment, chosen one. I want you to ask God one simple question, not with your head, but with your heart. Ask Him, "What do you want to say to me?" Don't rush it. Don't fill the silence with your own words. Let the silence be sacred. Let it be pregnant with possibility. In Psalm 46:10, God commands us to be still and know that I am God. The Hebrew word for be still is rapha. It means to let go, to cease striving, to stop fighting. Stop fighting for answers. Stop fighting for understanding. Stop fighting to make sense of your pain. Just be still and let God fill the silence with His presence. Maybe He'll remind you of His faithfulness through 40 years of marriage. Maybe He'll show you how He protected you through that diagnosis that should have destroyed you. Maybe He'll whisper words of comfort over the child you buried too soon. Maybe He'll reveal the purpose behind the pain you've carried like a stone in your chest. Or maybe, just maybe, He'll simply flood your heart with the overwhelming realization that you are loved beyond measure, chosen beyond doubt, and held beyond any storm this world can throw at you. The conversation you're about to have won't be audible to anyone else, but it will be undeniable to you. God speaks in whispers to hearts that have learned to be still. He reveals Himself to souls that have stopped performing and started trusting. This isn't just spiritual counseling, beloved. This is divine intervention. This is the moment your faith transforms from religion to relationship. This is when you stop believing in God and start believing God believes in you. But here's the urgency that should grip your soul right now. This window won't stay open forever. Divine appointments have divine timing. When God says now, He means now. When He opens a door for intimate conversation, that door can close just as quickly if we choose distraction over devotion. Are you ready to finally have the conversation you've been avoiding your entire life? Listen to me, chosen one. Every breath you've taken, every tear you've shed, every night you've cried out to heaven wondering if God still hears you, it's all been leading to this moment. You are standing at the edge of the most critical 7 days of your entire existence. You think I'm being dramatic? You think I'm exaggerating? Let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. The children of Israel marched around Jericho for 6 days in complete silence. 6 days of walking the same path, seeing the same impossible walls, hearing the same mocking voices from the enemy. 6 days of wondering if God had forgotten his promise. Can you imagine what they felt on day 5? The doubt creeping in, the whispers among themselves. Maybe we heard wrong. Maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe we're just walking in circles like fools. But Joshua knew something they didn't. He knew that breakthrough doesn't come on your timeline. It comes on God's timeline. And God's timing is always perfect, even when it feels like torture. You are on your 6th lap around the walls that have imprisoned you for decades. That financial curse that's haunted your family for 3 generations, that's your Jericho. That loneliness that makes you question if anyone truly sees you, that's your Jericho. That sickness the doctors can't explain, that depression that visits you at 3 a.m., that broken relationship that's left you feeling like damaged goods, those are your walls. But here's what will shock you. Tomorrow is your 7th day. Not next month, not next year. Tomorrow. And on the 7th day, God commanded Israel to do something that seemed absolutely insane. They had to shout. Not whisper, not hope quietly. Not pray politely. They had to open their mouths and release a sound so powerful that ancient walls would crumble in an instant. Dear one, are you ready to shout? Or will you stay silent for another decade? Here's what terrifies me for you. Most people reach their 7th day and they don't even recognize it. They're so used to walking in circles, so comfortable with their prison, so familiar with their limitations, that when God says, now is the time to break free, they just keep walking. They miss their moment because they've trained themselves to expect nothing. But you're different, aren't you? You're still here. You're still listening. After everything life has thrown at you, the betrayals, the disappointments, the seasons when heaven felt like it was made of brass, you're still here. That's not accident. That's divine appointment. Jeremiah 29:11 declares, For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future. But here's what most people miss. God's plans have timing, and right now, his clock is striking 7 over your life. The next 7 days are not ordinary days. They are your Joshua moment, your Red Sea moment, your Daniel in the lion's den moment. But you have to participate. You have to engage. You can't be a spectator in your own miracle. I'm going to give you something that will change everything, but only if you have the courage to act on it. For the next 7 days, I want you to do what seems impossible for someone your age, someone with your history, someone who's been disappointed so many times. I want you to wake up every morning and do something radical. Day 1. Wake up and declare out loud, God, I'm still here. I'm still listening. Speak to me today. Don't mumble it. Don't think it. Say it with the authority of someone who knows they're chosen. Day 2. Ask God one specific question that's been burning in your heart for years. Then spend the entire day watching for his answer. It might come through a conversation, a memory, a song on the radio, or a verse that jumps off the page. Day 3. Forgive someone who doesn't deserve it. I know that sounds impossible. I know they hurt you. But unforgiveness is the heaviest chain you carry, and God can't pour new wine into a bitter vessel. Day 4. Do something that scares you. Take a step toward a dream you thought was dead. Make a phone call you've been avoiding. Apply for something you think you're not qualified for. God's not looking for perfection. He's looking for courage. Day 5. Give something away. Money, time, encouragement to someone who needs it more than you do. Test God in this. See if he doesn't open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing you don't have room to contain. Day 6. Fast from something that's been numbing you. Maybe it's television, maybe it's negative thinking, maybe it's isolation. Create space for God's voice by removing the noise. Day 7. This is the day you shout. You declare victory before you see it. You thank God for what He's about to do, not just what He's done. You walk around your Jericho one last time, and you open your mouth and you roar. But let me warn you about something that's going to try to stop you. The moment, and I mean the very moment, you commit to these 7 days, hell is going to unleash everything it has to distract you, discourage you, and make you quit. You'll get bad news. People will disappoint you. Your emotions will go haywire. Your body will rebel. That's not God punishing you. That's the enemy panicking because he knows what's about to happen when you complete this assignment. Ephesians 6:12 reminds us, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. The warfare isn't evidence that you're on the wrong path. It's proof that you're on the right one. Here's what I need you to understand. You will never get another opportunity like this, not because God doesn't love you, but because divine windows have seasons. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Your season is now, your time is today, your 7th day starts tomorrow. Write this down right now, don't wait, don't think about it, grab a pen and write. 7 days, no more delay, no more doubt. Every morning I will say, speak Lord, I'm listening. Write it on your mirror, tape it to your refrigerator, put it on your nightstand, because for the next 7 days, this isn't just a commitment, it's your covenant with the Almighty. The walls that have defined your limitations for decades are about to discover what happens when someone finally decides to shout instead of surrender. But here's the question that will determine your destiny. When your moment comes tomorrow, when heaven signals that it's time to open your mouth and declare victory over your circumstances, will you have the faith to shout loud enough to bring down walls that have stood for generations? You've been there, haven't you? Kneeling beside your bed at 2 a.m., tears streaming down your weathered face, whispering the same desperate prayer you've whispered for 20 years. Maybe it was for your prodigal son to come home. Maybe it was for that diagnosis to disappear. Maybe it was just for God to show up anyway, so you'd know He still remembered your name. And then, silence. Not just quiet, not just delayed answers, but the kind of deafening spiritual silence that makes you wonder if your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling like rubber balls. The kind of silence that whispers cruel lies. Maybe you're not worthy. Maybe you prayed wrong. Maybe God moved on without you. Dear chosen one, let me shatter that lie with a truth that's going to change everything you thought you knew about divine timing. God doesn't ghost. He gathers. When heaven feels silent, it's not because God stopped listening. It's because He's orchestrating something so magnificent, so precisely timed, that one day early or one moment late would ruin the entire masterpiece. Your unanswered prayers aren't evidence of His absence, they're evidence of His precision. Think about Lazarus. For 4 days, Mary and Martha watched their brother rot in a tomb, while Jesus seemingly ignored their desperate pleas. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, they cried. Sound familiar? How many times have you screamed those exact words at heaven? If you had shown up when I asked, my marriage wouldn't have died, my dreams wouldn't have died, my hope wouldn't have died. But here's what Martha didn't know, and what you're about to discover: Jesus wasn't late. He was right on time for a resurrection. You see, if Jesus had healed Lazarus when he was sick, it would have been impressive. But letting him die completely, letting hope flatline, letting everyone give up, and then calling him back to life, that's not just healing, that's resurrection power. That's God showing up, not just to fix your problem, but to flip the entire script of what's possible. The silence wasn't rejection, it was God setting the stage for a resurrection. For 30 years, you've been faithful when faith made no sense. You tithed when you couldn't afford groceries. You forgave when forgiveness felt impossible. You stayed when leaving would have been easier. And what did you get for it? more silence, more waiting, more watching other people get their breakthrough while you got nothing. But Romans 8:28 wasn't written for people whose lives made sense. It was written for people like you. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. All things, not some things, not the easy things, all things, including the silence, including the delay, including the pain that nearly killed you. Here's what the enemy has been hiding from you. Every unanswered prayer has been gathering compound interest in heaven's bank. Every tear you've cried in secret has been stored in God's bottle. Every moment you stayed faithful when faith felt dead has been building towards something so powerful that when it finally breaks loose, hell itself will tremble. When a seed is buried in the ground, it doesn't feel like planting, it feels like death. Surrounded by darkness, crushed by the weight of soil, unable to see the sun. If that seed could speak, it would probably scream, "God, where are you? Why did you bury me alive? I thought you loved me." But the farmer knows something the seed doesn't. The burial isn't punishment, it's positioning. The darkness isn't abandonment, it's activation. What feels like death is actually the beginning of breakthrough. You've been buried, dear one. For years, maybe decades, you've felt the crushing weight of circumstances pressing down on you. You've cried out from the darkness, "God, have you forgotten me?" But what if the burial wasn't your ending? What if it was your beginning? What if every season of silence was God preparing you for a sound so loud, so clear, so undeniable, that when he finally speaks, the whole world will know his voice came through you? You think you've been waiting for God to show up. But what if God has been waiting for you to be ready for the magnitude of what he's about to release? What if the delay wasn't divine neglect, but divine love protecting you from receiving something you weren't yet strong enough to carry? Tomorrow changes everything, but tonight you need to understand why the wait was necessary. Because when God breaks his silence tomorrow, and he will, you'll finally see that every moment of delay was actually divine precision, preparing you for the greatest breakthrough of your life. But here's the question that will determine everything. Are you ready to stop seeing your silence as abandonment and start seeing it as appointment? Listen to me, chosen one. Right now, as you're sitting there watching this, I can feel it through the screen, that trembling in your chest, that fear that everything you've built, everything you've counted on, everything you thought was secure, is crumbling before your eyes. Your marriage of 43 years feels like it's hanging by a thread. Your retirement savings that you worked decades to build just took another hit. Your children barely call anymore. Your body is betraying you with every doctor's visit. And you're lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering if God has forgotten your address. You think you're losing your mind. You think you're being punished. You think maybe you did something wrong, said something wrong, believed something wrong. But what if I told you that the earthquake happening in your life right now isn't destruction, it's divine demolition? Before a womb gives birth, it contracts. The pain is excruciating. The pressure is unbearable. But that pain, that pressure, it's not trying to kill the baby. It's trying to deliver the miracle. Job understood this. When everything fell apart in 24 hours, his children, his wealth, his health, his reputation, his wife looked at him covered in boils and said, "Curse God and die." But Job, this man who lost everything that could be lost, declared something that shook hell itself. "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Job 13:15. Write that down, because Job discovered something that most people never learn. God's greatest movements often begin with divine disruption. You see, dear one, what feels like your life falling apart is actually heaven making space. God is clearing out everything that was keeping you small, everything that was keeping you comfortable, everything that was keeping you from your destiny. That job you just lost at 72, God moved you out because where you're going doesn't require a boss. That friendship that just ended after 30 years, God separated you because they were anchoring you to your past instead of launching you into your future. That financial crisis that's got you up at night, God is teaching you that your security was never in that bank account anyway. Jeremiah 1:10 says, I have set you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Did you catch that order? First comes the tearing down, then comes the building up. But here's what most people don't understand about spiritual storms. They're not random, they're targeted. Heaven doesn't demolish for destruction, heaven demolishes for reconstruction. Right now, you're in the eye of a divine hurricane. Everything that seemed permanent is being shaken. Everything that felt secure is being tested. Everything you thought you could count on is being questioned. And you're scared. Of course you're scared. You're watching your world change at an age when you thought change was over. But listen to me very carefully. What's happening to you right now is so precise, so strategic, so divinely orchestrated that hell itself is trembling. Because the enemy knows something you don't know yet. He knows that when God starts rearranging a chosen one's life at this level, it's because something massive is about to be born. Moses was 80 when God called him out of retirement to deliver a nation. Abraham was 99 when God promised him a son. Anna was 84 when she finally saw the Messiah she'd been waiting for her entire life. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your credential. Your scars aren't your shame, they're your authority. Your storms aren't your sentence, they're your setup. But I need to tell you something that's going to shock you. The storm you're in right now, you're not supposed to stop it. You're supposed to surrender to it. Isaiah 43:2 promises, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. Notice it doesn't say, if you pass through the waters. It says when. The storm is part of the plan. If you've been feeling things collapsing around you, comment. Let it fall. You're not losing everything. You're losing what was never meant to last. The house that's too big for you now, let it fall. God's got something better. The relationships that drain your spirit, let them fall. God's preparing divine connections. The financial structures that stress you out, let them fall. God's about to teach you about His economy. What you think is your worst nightmare is actually your greatest breakthrough in disguise. But there's something else happening beneath the surface that most people miss. While you're focused on what's falling apart, God is secretly assembling what's coming together. While you're mourning what's ending, heaven is celebrating what's beginning. And if you think the storm you're in right now is intense, wait until you see what God builds from the rubble. Because what's coming next will make you understand why everything had to fall first. You thought you were forgotten, didn't you? You thought you were just another face in the crowd, another name on God's endless list of believers who pray hard but never quite break through. You've sat in church pews for decades, tithed when you couldn't afford to, served on committees when your body ached, raised children who barely call, and wondered if God even sees you anymore. But what if I told you that your invisibility was intentional? What if I told you that while you thought you were being overlooked, you were actually being observed? What if every struggle, every sleepless night, every moment you felt abandoned was actually divine preparation for something so significant that heaven had to hide you until the appointed time? Listen to me, chosen one. You are being marked right now, at this very moment. And the mark isn't visible to human eyes, but it's burning bright in the spirit realm. 1 Samuel chapter 16. The prophet Samuel stands before Jesse's sons, looking for the next king of Israel. 7 sons parade before him, tall, strong, impressive men who look the part. But God says no to every single one. Where's your youngest? Samuel asks. Oh, David, he's out in the fields with the sheep. He's just a kid. But when that shepherd boy walks in, the Bible says the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day forward. David wasn't chosen because he was qualified. He was qualified because he was chosen. And here's what'll shock you about that story. David was anointed king at maybe 15 years old, but he didn't touch the throne until he was 30. 15 years of waiting, hiding, running from King Saul, wondering if that oil Samuel poured on his head meant anything at all. But God wasn't late. God was preparing him. And you've been in your own 15-year preparation. Maybe it's been 50 years, maybe 70. Every rejection that stung, every door that slammed, every dream that died, it wasn't God punishing you. It was God protecting you from receiving something you weren't ready to handle. Heaven isn't looking for perfect vessels, just willing ones. And the oil doesn't flow until the flask is broken. You want to know why your life has been so hard? You want to know why nothing ever came easy? Because easy doesn't produce character. Comfort doesn't build faith. Smooth sailing doesn't teach you to depend on God when the storms rage. You've been through more than most people could handle. Lost your spouse and somehow kept breathing. Buried dreams and somehow kept hoping. Faced bankruptcy and somehow kept tithing. Watched your children make devastating choices and somehow kept praying. That's not human strength, beloved. That's supernatural endurance being forged in you. The enemy has been trying to break you for decades because he could see the mark forming on your spirit. He knew that if you ever fully awakened to who you really are, his reign of terror in your family line would be over. Every attack was confirmation of your calling. But here's the revelation that's going to shatter everything you thought you knew about your story. You were never hidden. You were being preserved for the right hour. Think about Queen Esther, an orphan girl raised by her cousin with no earthly reason to believe she'd ever amount to anything. But Esther 4:14 reveals the mystery. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? She wasn't accidentally queen. She was strategically positioned. Every detail of your life, where you were born, who raised you, what you survived, who you married, how many children you had, what neighborhood you live in now, none of it was random. God has been positioning you like chess pieces on a divine board, and now, it's your move. You think you're too old. Moses was 80 when God called him from the burning bush. You think you're too broken. David was a fugitive living in caves when he wrote his most powerful psalms. You think you're too ordinary. Mary was a teenage girl from nowhere when heaven chose her to carry the Messiah. God doesn't call you because you're ready. He makes you ready because he's called you. Right now, at this very moment, there's a stirring in the heavenlies. Angels are taking new positions around your life. Demonic assignments that have harassed your family for generations are being reassigned because their time is up. Your season of testing is complete. Your season of manifesting has begun. But here's what you must understand. The marking process isn't finished yet. Tomorrow, when you wake up, you're going to feel different. Not physically, though that might happen too. Spiritually different. Like someone turned up the volume on your spiritual sensitivity. Like someone adjusted the frequency, and now you can hear things you couldn't hear before. You'll start noticing things, patterns, synchronicities, divine appointments disguised as coincidences. That person who randomly calls with exactly what you need to hear. That scripture that jumps off the page and hits you like lightning. That dream that's so vivid you wake up knowing God just downloaded something into your spirit. These aren't accidents. These are confirmations. The mark is activating. But I need you to understand something crucial about this marking. It comes with responsibility. When Samuel anointed David, the Bible says, "The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day forward." But it also says that from that same day, an evil spirit tormented Saul. When God marks you for increase, the enemy marks you for attack. Are you ready for that level of spiritual warfare? Are you ready to be a lightning rod for both blessing and battle? Because that's what happens when God decides it's time to use you publicly. The comfortable Christian life you've been living is about to end. The season of sitting in the back row, blending in, playing it safe, that's over. God is calling you to the front lines of a battle you didn't even know you were already fighting. So I ask you this. When heaven calls your name tomorrow, will you answer, "Here I am, send me," like Isaiah, or will you make excuses like Moses? Will you step into your destiny like Esther, Or will you run like Jonah? Because ready or not, your name is being called. The marking is almost complete. And what happens next will determine not just your legacy, but the eternal destiny of everyone connected to your bloodline. The question that will haunt you forever if you don't answer it right now is this: what if this was your moment and you missed it? Listen to me, dear one. Right now, as you sit there wondering if this message is really for you, heaven's clock is ticking. Not your kitchen clock, not your smartphone. Heaven's clock. And it's showing 11:59 p.m. on your spiritual timeline. You see, there are two kinds of time operating in your life right now. The Greeks called them chronos and kairos. Chronos is the time you know, seconds, minutes, hours grinding by like a broken machine. But Kairos is God's time. It's the appointed moment when eternity crashes into your living room and everything changes forever. Tonight is your Kairos moment. Midnight isn't the end of the day, it's the beginning of a new one. And God isn't looking at your clock. He's moving according to his calendar. A calendar that was written before your great-grandmother drew her first breath. But here's what's breaking my heart right now. Here's what's keeping me awake at 2 a.m., praying for people just like you. Most believers spend their entire lives waiting for God to show up, and when he finally does, they're too distracted to notice. They're too comfortable in their routine to recognize that the Almighty is standing at their door. Jesus said it plainly in Revelation 3:20. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him, and he with me. He's knocking right now. Can you hear it? Or have the sounds of your daily routine, the television, the worries, the endless scrolling drowned out the most important sound you'll ever hear? Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many divine appointments have you missed because you thought they were just ordinary moments? How many times has God tried to speak to you through that coincidence, that unexpected phone call, that sudden peace in the middle of chaos, and you brushed it off as luck? The widow of Zarephath was down to her last meal when Elijah showed up. Her last meal. She was preparing to die, and God's prophet knocked on her door asking for bread. 1 Kings 17. She had every reason to slam that door, every logical excuse to say, "Not today, preacher, I'm busy dying." But she opened the door. She shared her last handful of flour. And that jar of oil, it never ran empty, not during the entire 3.5-year famine. Tonight, you're that widow. You've been rationing hope for so long, you've forgotten what abundance feels like. You've been surviving on spiritual scraps when God wants to fill your house with his presence. Here's the terrifying truth nobody wants to tell you. Divine windows don't stay open forever. Ask the 5 foolish virgins in Matthew 25. They heard the bridegroom coming. They saw the wise virgins preparing their lamps, but they thought they had more time. We'll get ready tomorrow. We'll buy oil in the morning. But when they came back with their lamps finally lit, what did they find? A closed door. And from behind that door, the most chilling words in all of Scripture. Truly, I say to you, I do not know you. Not because they weren't invited, not because they weren't chosen, but because they missed their moment. Is that going to be your story? Are you going to be the one standing outside, knocking on a door that's already closed, crying, "Lord, Lord, remember when I used to watch those YouTube videos? Remember when I felt you calling me?" The difference between breakthrough and breakdown isn't your age. It isn't your education. It isn't your bank account or your past mistakes. The difference is recognizing the moment when heaven intersects with your situation and saying yes before logic talks you out of it. Noah didn't wait for rain to start building the ark. Abraham didn't wait to see the promised land before he packed his bags. Moses didn't wait for the burning bush to stop burning before he took off his shoes. They moved when God spoke, not when it made sense, not when they felt ready, when he spoke. Right now, at this very second, the Holy Spirit is hovering over your life like he hovered over the waters in Genesis 1-2. He's waiting for you to speak, waiting for you to respond, waiting for you to stop analyzing and start activating. But I need you to understand something that will either liberate you or terrify you. God's calendar doesn't run on your schedule. His Kairos moments aren't extended because you're having a bad week. His divine appointments don't get rescheduled because you're not emotionally ready. When the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary, did he ask if it was convenient? When Jesus called the disciples, did he give them 2 weeks' notice? When Paul was struck down on the Damascus road, did God check his calendar first? Divine interruption is God's specialty, and tonight he's interrupting your normal to introduce you to your supernatural. The question that will haunt you for the rest of your life or launch you into your destiny is this: will you answer while he's still knocking, or will you wait until the knocking stops? Comment your name plus today's date right now. Mark this moment. This is your midnight. This is your Kairos. This is the night everything changes if you let it. Because tomorrow morning, one of two things will happen. Either you'll wake up transformed by a divine encounter that shifted your entire trajectory, or you'll wake up with the hollow ache of knowing you heard heaven calling and chose to hit the snooze button. The window is open. The invitation is extended. But midnight doesn't wait for anyone. What's it going to be? Dear chosen one, there comes a moment in every life when heaven stops whispering and starts demanding an answer. Tonight, you're standing at that crossroads. The question isn't whether God is calling you. The question is whether you'll finally have the courage to say yes. But let me tell you what nobody talks about when they preach about obedience. It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Because when you say yes to God, you're not just agreeing to a blessing, you're signing up for the unknown. You're stepping into a story where you're no longer the author, and that scares the living daylights out of most people. Abraham knew this terror. Genesis 12:1 records the moment that changed everything. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to a land I will show you." Notice what God didn't say. He didn't give Abraham a GPS route. He didn't show him Google Earth images of his destination. He didn't even tell him how long the journey would take. God said, "Go," and that was it. Can you imagine being 75 years old, Abraham's age, when God called him, and being asked to leave everything you know? Your retirement plans, your social security, your familiar doctors, your weekly bridge game with the ladies from church. Everything. For what? For a promise you couldn't see, and a destination you couldn't pronounce. But here's what happened when Abraham said yes. He didn't just become the father of one nation, he became the father of many nations. His obedience didn't just change his life, it rewrote the story of humanity itself. Every blessing you've ever received traces back to one old man's willingness to say yes when it made absolutely no sense. Now let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times has God whispered a yes or no question into your spirit, and you pretended you didn't hear him? How many divine appointments have you missed because you were waiting for the perfect time? How many destinies have remained dormant because you chose safety over surrender? The door of destiny doesn't have a handle on the outside. It only opens when you push from within. Sarah Henderson was 82 years old when she heard God's whisper. Her husband had passed, her children lived across the country, and she was spending her golden years in a small apartment in Queens, watching the world through her window. Most people would call that the end of the story, but God was just getting started. One Sunday morning, sitting in her usual pew in the back of the church, Sarah felt the Holy Spirit speak to her heart. Go to the nursing home. Tell them about my love. The logical part of her brain immediately protested. She wasn't a preacher. She'd never given a testimony. She was just a widow with arthritis and a Brooklyn accent. But something deeper than logic was stirring. When Sarah finally said yes when she walked into that nursing home for the first time, she discovered 47 forgotten souls who hadn't heard a word of hope in months. Within 2 years, Sarah's simple obedience had sparked a revival that spread to 6 nursing homes across the borough. Hundreds of elderly residents found Jesus in their final chapters because one 82-year-old woman chose courage over comfort. But here's the part that will shatter your heart and remake it at the same time. Sarah almost said no. She told me later, "I spent 3 months making excuses. I told God I was too old, too shy, too ordinary. I nearly talked myself out of the greatest adventure of my life." How many Sarah Hendersons are sitting in their living rooms right now, hearing God's whisper but choosing silence instead of surrender? How many world-changing ministries are dying in the hearts of 7-0-year-olds who think their calling expired with their career? The risk of obedience is high, but the risk of regret is higher. You see, when you say no to God, you're not just declining an opportunity, you're declining to become who you were created to be. You're choosing to die with your music still inside you. You're settling for the shallow end of the pool when God designed you for the deep waters. But when you say yes, when you finally say yes, everything changes. Not just your circumstances, but your spiritual DNA. You move from existing to living, from surviving to thriving, from ordinary to extraordinary. You discover that the God who called you is the same God who equipped you, and He never sends anyone on a mission without providing the means. Tonight, God is asking you the same question He asked Abraham, the same question He whispered to Sarah Henderson. Will you trust me enough to say yes? What will your answer be? Because tomorrow's breakthrough depends entirely on tonight's surrender. Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred journey together, I need you to carry these truths with you like precious stones in your heart. Remember this, you didn't find this message by accident. God orchestrated every moment that led you here because He has something urgent to tell you before tomorrow comes. The stirring in your spirit, the weight in your chest, the inexplicable sense that change is coming, these aren't coincidences. They're confirmations that heaven is moving on your behalf. Remember that your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. Every wrinkle tells a story of God's faithfulness. Every scar bears witness to battles won. Every gray hair is a crown of wisdom earned through decades of walking with the Almighty. You are not too old, too late, or too ordinary. You are precisely positioned for such a time as this. And remember that saying yes to God doesn't require perfection, it requires availability. Abraham didn't have all the answers when he left Ur. Sarah Henderson didn't feel qualified when she walked into that nursing home. Moses stuttered when God called him to speak to Pharaoh. But their willingness to say yes changed the world. But hear me clearly, dear one, you are not walking this path alone. Even when the road feels uncertain, even when doubt whispers lies in your ear, the Creator of the universe is working behind the scenes on your behalf. He's moving mountains you can't see, opening doors you haven't found yet, and orchestrating blessings you can't even imagine. And right here, in this community of believers, you have thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your journey. We're not just viewers on a screen, we're a family, united by faith, connected by hope, and bound together by the love of Christ. When the world tells you you're forgotten, we're here to remind you that you're chosen. When circumstances tell you it's over, we're here to declare that it's just beginning. Let me ask you this final question, and let it settle deep in your spirit. If God is truly calling your name tonight, if He's asking you to trust Him with tomorrow, what will your answer be? Before I release you into your destiny, I want to pray over you. Right now, wherever you are, I want you to close your eyes and let these words wash over your spirit like healing oil. Heavenly Father, I lift up every precious soul who has stayed with me through this entire message. Lord, you see their hearts. You know their struggles. You've counted every tear they've cried in secret. But Father, you also see their faith. You know their hunger for more. You feel their willingness to say yes even when they're afraid. God, I pray that you would silence every voice of doubt that has whispered, "You're too old." I pray that you would break every chain of fear that has held them captive. I pray that you would open their eyes to see the doors you're already opening, the opportunities you're already creating, the miracles you're already orchestrating. Place your mighty hand upon their shoulders right now. Let them feel your presence like a warm embrace. Remind them that they are loved beyond measure, chosen beyond understanding, and destined for greatness beyond their wildest dreams. Give them courage for tomorrow's challenges, wisdom for tomorrow's decisions, and faith for tomorrow's impossibilities. Let them wake up not as survivors of yesterday, but as victors walking into tomorrow. And Lord, use their obedience to light a fire in others. Let their yes become a catalyst for revival in their families, their communities, their generation. May they become living proof that you still move mountains through willing hearts. In Jesus' mighty name, Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share how this message has impacted your heart. What is God asking you to say yes to? What door is He calling you to walk through? Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to find their courage. Type I say yes if you're ready to surrender to God's calling. Type pray for me if you need this community to lift you up. And if this message touched your soul, share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not too old, not too late, and certainly not forgotten. Before you go, if this is your first time here, welcome to the family. Hit that subscribe button and join thousands of believers who gather here regularly to be encouraged, equipped, and empowered for kingdom living. We're building something beautiful together, a community where faith grows, hope is restored, and destinies are fulfilled. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Thank you for opening your heart, for letting these words penetrate the sacred chambers of your soul. Thank you for being brave enough to believe that your greatest chapter might still be ahead of you. The choice is yours, chosen one. God is waiting for your answer. What will it be? Until we meet again, walk in the confidence that you are loved, you are chosen, and you are never, ever alone. God bless you mightily.